but simply because what do the Rams have to offer? They don't have a first and a third because of the trades they made to get Jared Goff. Sean Payton is not getting traded for a second-round pick, and if you're Mickey Loomis, you totally need to be fired or drug-tested, whatever have you, put into a rehab facility, whatever needs to be done if he ever trades the greatest coach in Saints history for a second-round pick. I'm sorry. But when I look at other franchises around the league, I do think there's some truth, or at least the probability goes up for Sean Payton being able to leave. I look at a franchise like Denver, ready-made defense. And forgive me for saying it this way, but we all know Sean Payton has a thing for Tony Romo. I could definitely see a situation to where Tony Romo and Sean Payton end up in Denver with a ready-made defense and an offense that's ready to go as well. They just need, their quarterback away because Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian, they are who they are at this point. But a veteran quarterback like Tony Romo may be intriguing for Sean Payton to say, hey, let's make that move. You look at teams like San Francisco where Sean Payton could get full control, San Francisco and Indianapolis. He could get full control, and you already have a quarterback in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck. You still don't have a defense, so you're basically in the same situation you are with the Saints. But that full control part, when you have money, and Sean Payton has 9 million reasons for the next 4 years to say that, he should stay. But when you have money, the only thing better than money is power. And that's what Sean Payton may want. Yes, he's the de facto GM, but he's not the president of football operations. And he won't be as long as Mickey and Dennis Lawson are in control. He can do what he pretty much wants. But sometimes, just sometimes, there's a little bit of truth to it. Now, I mean, you and I have went back and forth on this before, Deuce. And look, I'm not saying get rid of the guy. I'm just simply saying I don't think, and maybe it's possible, but I don't think a reporter, much like a Larry Holder, Mike Triplett, guys that I personally know, I can't see them sitting down at night, waking up at 2 in the morning in a cold sweat, just being like, you know what? Eureka, I got it. I'm going to say Sean Payton had a 1-hour meeting after the game with Mickey Loomis, and there's no truth to that rumor. I can't believe that.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there because it's one team I haven't heard mention. I'm also going to throw a very probably unpopular opinion. This one sets me aside from legitimate people like Sean and a guy who just gets to say whatever he wants and let a couple hundred people listen. I think that the reason that the whole LA Rams thing is getting pushed so much is because the narrative is they want LA to be successful because they are now shovel feeding 2 teams into Los Angeles and not doing very well so far. I think the NFL wants it just for hype to sell tickets. I just see the NFL as a business, and I think they've made several type moves like that before. So they give a little nudge to certain people who are known for the Peyton made famous Sunday Splash reports. It gets popular, and if you follow any Los Angeles Rams or even the old St. Louis fans' boards, they're hyped about the possibility of getting Sean Payton and see it as a legitimate possibility, whereas down here in New Orleans, we're like, are you serious? This is the 3rd year in a row. We've gone over this. Ain't happening. That's kind of my take on it. I think if there's any team available that he fits the best with, I know you mentioned Denver. I like him in San Diego with Phillip Rivers and talk about a storyline. I think he'd be a real good fit over there, and he likes California. So that's mine. What do you think, Sean?
Well, a lot of good points by both of you, and I appreciate you saying legitimate because I just usually go on the radio and say what I feel, too, with no consequences. But, listen, here's the thing, and that's another popular thing Sean Payton likes to say a lot is, well, listen. I'm with you on when Rappaport and Lacafora and Peter King say something. Look, those guys didn't get to that position for nothing. They clearly have sources and they're in the know. But I do put a lot more on when Larry, who I know would have a lot of respect for, or Nick Underhill, or Mike Triplett, when they say something, they're not just throwing that out of midair. They've gotten a source from somewhere. And trust me, it's everywhere in this business. Somebody wants to tell you something because they want to be in the know. It's either coming from Sean Payton's camp or it's coming from somebody inside the organization. They did not just come up with this out of midair. I think Sean Payton is going to come back in 2017 with the Saints? Yes, I do. But we'll get to that, and I'll kind of say where I think this thing is going to go in the future. But I think in possibilities, I'm sure you guys have talked about it before. Sean Payton's daughter lives in California. Well, there's 3 jobs that happen to be open in California, one of them being Los Angeles, one of them being San Diego, the other one being San Francisco. I don't think either one of them are particularly great jobs, but they are in California, and he may want to be closer to his daughter. I like what you said about Denver. I think that one would make the most sense because, well, it's the Denver Broncos. They were just in the Super Bowl a year ago. You mentioned the connection to Tony Romo. I bring this up all the time on my show. Not only did they go to the same school, if you remember, ESPN, the day of the Super Bowl, back in 2009, said they drew out what was going to happen. If Breeze signed with the Dolphins, the Saints had a trade in place to get Tony Romo. So, yes, there is that Tony Romo, which I do think he's going to end up in Denver. I'm 100% agree with that. There is that connection between Peyton, Romo, and why would you not? If you look at all the jobs available, do you want to go to Siberia, otherwise known as Buffalo? Do you want to go to Jacksonville? Hell no. Nobody wants to go to Jacksonville. You look at all the jobs that are available, a no-brainer. Why would you not want to go to Denver?
I'm fully in agreement with what you said just now. In complete agreement with everything you just said. And as far as Denver's concerned, they also, and again, I'm with you guys. I think Sean Payton is going to be back in 2017, and Rev, you and I have discussed this plenty of times. I think 2017 will be a much better year for the Saints. But when you look at the possibility of Sean Payton going to Denver, they actually have the most assets that are intriguing for the Saints if you're going to give up Sean Payton. Mm-hmm. You have your pick between Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch. Saints were very high on Paxton Lynch, Sean Payton being one of those guys, as well as the fact that they do have other assets. Maybe they're tired of Aqib Talib's nonsense, and of course the Saints need a cornerback. So, there's a lot of assets as well as draft picks, and basically with the Denver Broncos, I'm not saying that they should mortgage their future by any stretch of the imagination, but if there's any team that's ready to compete for the Super Bowl today, and all they're missing is maybe a quarterback and a coach that can get it done, not a Gary Kubiak step down, I don't really think Denver needs many draft picks. They've got a team that's ready to compete right now, so they have the assets that they can trade with the Saints. And if I'm Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton comes to me and he says, I want to go anywhere, and I'm pretty sure we'll discuss, the Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton thing ad nauseum tonight, but if I'm Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton is, he's on board with it, first team I call is Denver, and the second team I call is Indianapolis.
Well, I'm not against it, and I know Sean hasn't because it's the first time I've actually invited him on the show. He hasn't ignored us all season. But like you said, Brian, we've talked about this before. I've felt all year long, I think the way contracts have been planned and laid out, including Peyton's extension, just the way some front office overhaul has gone, where we allowed our assistant GM to go to the Bears. We brought in Jeff Ireland to redo the scouting department. They've made an effort. And anytime you redo a scouting department, you don't expect that to have an immediate splash. That is a 2-3 year in the future type move. You see how it pans out. I've always felt like 2017 was the year. Mickey Loomis and Peyton and them, they're not idiots. They know what's happening before we do. They saw $36 million plus another $4 to $8 million after restructures available in the 2017 offseason. So they knew that if they changed how they were drafted, and they could see that it was failing. I wrote a report a couple years ago that says Sean Payton had a 17% retention rate on defensive players. That means their scouting department was gosh awful, flaming garbage, dumpster fire bad when drafting defense compared to teams like New England Patriots who are around the 40 to 50% mark. So if you're dropping off that many players, you've got a bad scouting department. Since then, you've seen a complete flip in that number with Jeff Ireland and company. So I think the plan's always been 2017. Now, what happens after that is going to determine the next 3 years of the Saints' future. Do they succeed and Sean Payton and Breeze extend and stay? Or is it the same 7-9 that we've seen? At that point, I see Mickey Loomis saying, look, we love you. Things ain't working anymore. There's a reason coaches don't stay past 10 years. We're going to help you out as much as we can, but you got to find a new place. And the Saints basically do a self-implosion to sell off all their assets and rebuild completely. And I felt that's what the plan was all year long. I didn't come into this year with aspirations of Super Bowl. Anybody who viewed our roster, even healthy, and the schedule we had to face, realistically could not have seen this as a deep-run playoff team. Yeah, sure, miracles are possible, but we're talking about the New Orleans Saints, not the Chicago Cubs. We don't get a lot of miracles. So that's just how I've seen the whole year going. And for Saints fans to just be up in a rut basically the past month, not understanding what's going on, it's like it's not just me. Nick Underhill's talked about this, and I've talked to him about it. NOLA.com, Tom's Picayune, has mentioned that this is a rebuilding type of a year, the past 2 years in general. And I'm sure Sean feels the same way.
Oh, no, let me jump. Yeah, let me jump. It's not just I agree, but let me also disagree. I think most people, you look at the roster and you looked at the landscape of the league and, are they a 7-9 team? I still thought, okay, if healthy, with number 9, who hasn't dropped off, you're still going to have a chance. I mean, you could still – the NFC South, Atlanta's taken us all by storm, but I wasn't buying Cam Newton. I thought that was a one-year thing. I thought Carolina was beatable. I thought they'd be in the hunt, and not to go to the Super Bowl, but to at least win the division. And I guess the thing that frustrates me, and why maybe some of your listeners have been frustrated, is because, and I think I was actually, I'm going to take a little credit here and pat myself on that. I was the first one to point this out on Twitter, and I know it got a lot of play from the New Orleans media. This was like the third or fourth time under the Peyton Breeze regime that the Saints got off to slow starts. Every time they've gotten to they started 0-2 or worse, they've managed to get back to 500. And every time they've managed to get back to 500, the game to get above 500, they've lost. And they've done it at home. So I guess that gets frustrating is when you're going to get over that hump. It's amazing how the first game of the season out of 16 has meant so much to this franchise that only once under Peyton and Breeze have they gone 0-1, which was when they lost to Green Bay. They've made the playoffs. Other than that, every time they've gone 0-1, they haven't. That's crazy. But I'm going all that to get to this point about 2017. I'm with you, and I think we're all kind of in agreement here that it all is on 2017. Not to go to the Super Bowl, but to get to the playoffs. If they do not go to the playoffs, not only do I think Peyton is walking away, I also think Breeze is gone too. And you're looking at you call it implosion, a complete rebuild of the franchise. If they go to the playoffs, I think they keep the team around, the gang, if you want to call it, the Holy Trinity, Peyton, Breeze, and Loomis together 2 or 3 more seasons. But if they do not make the postseason in 2017, I think the rebuild starts.
Sean, you are a gentleman and a scholar. I am so glad you brought that last point up because I have been chomping at the bit to bring that up lately. And it's not just because of your opinion and what you're saying, and of course we're in agreement with that, but it's the idea that a lot of times there's a lot of truth when somebody's just speaking and not even paying attention, even those who are trying to be as politically as correct as possible, like a Drew Brees. But sometimes, if you listen close enough, they'll tell you the future. Case in point, this week, Drew Brees comes out and says, well, I think what I'm going to do is I signed the 1-year extension, and I think what I'm going to do from that point on is I'm just going to concentrate on the Saints 1 year at a time. That's a very interesting contrast from the same man that told us a year ago, I want to sign a long-term deal. Drew Brees' words just last year were, I think I could play into my mid-40s. Now he's telling you a totally different story, which is... Not only that, let me add to your point. We've all been focusing on what Peyton has been doing and what he is saying or not saying. He said on Cox Sports Television Sunday after the game, I can't keep saying, wait till next year, wait till next year, wait till next year. We haven't been paying enough attention to that.
Yeah. Well, let me throw this out there, too, because we got Brian in California's got a point. I'll let him get that. Let me throw this out there to you, Sean. Not that I thought that this team was going to come out and underperform. I thought that they had a run at the division because it was weak. I did have Atlanta winning. Sure. I hate doing that. My reason is because I did not foresee things like Nick Fairley becoming a top 3 defensive 3-tech in the NFL. I couldn't foresee Craig Robertson coming out of nowhere and becoming a dominant linebacker that we haven't seen in quite a few years. I didn't see Michael Thomas setting rookie records. I saw him doing well. Those factors kind of helped offset a lot of the injuries. I thought as a whole, this was a 7-9, 8-8 team who was going to get a wild card run. And I wasn't upset when that didn't happen. I felt like this team, it's obvious where they're trying to go. And for me, the main thing that they're lacking is depth. And I want to make sure Brian in California gets in here. Brian, you're on with a Who Dat Confessional with Sean and the other Brian.
How's it going, guys?
What's up, man?
I think, not unexpected, I think all you guys have made really good points. One thing I've noticed, and only the future will determine whether this is just bullshit or reality. From post-2011 to 2014, Saints were reactionary to everything was about, we're one piece away. We got to get that one piece because 2011 will always be the lost